gentlemen, welcome back to the fourth episode of the Tackle Talk Network. This is an exciting episode for me because, this week we had the most views. I'll probably touch on it later again, but we had the most views in our history as a channel this week on videos. I've had millions of views, not millions, calculated millions of views on shorts, and I'm very, very excited that we've had over 120 views on my podcast so far on YouTube. On Spotify, the numbers keep growing, and I thank you. Don't forget to like and follow. But let's get started in this week 4 episode of the Tackle Talk Network podcast. We are going to be recapping the championship weekend. I will touch on the Super Bowl just a touch, and then we're going to look on what's going on with the coaching carousel here in the NFL. And let's get into it. Let's get started with the first matchup that took place this last divisional weekend. And if I look at my notes right here real quick, it was the Commanders at the Philadelphia Eagles. They played at 2 p.m. on Fox. Now, seeing that this game was at 2, it was, in fact, the early game in this NFL Conference Championship weekend. The Commanders lost horribly to the Philadelphia Eagles. Last week, I had the Commanders pulling up an upset. If you go back and look at the tape, as the court has written down, I stated that if the Commanders could keep Saquon Barkley from rushing for over 120 yards, which they did, but there was one important thing. They couldn't turn over the dang ball, and they did that a little too much in this game. To start off, Zane Gonzalez kicked a 34-yard field goal to get the Commanders on the board after Commanders had a very, very long drive that lasted 7 minutes, and they converted on fourth down twice. Third time, they kicked it. That went for 18 plays and 54 yards. But then, the Philadelphia Eagles handed off the ball to Saquon, and in one play, they're on the board with a 60-yard touchdown. That took 18 seconds, and the Eagles were already off to a hot start. You thought that wasn't good enough. Washington then proceeded to turn the ball over again. Saquon Barkley had a 4-yard rushing touchdown. The Eagles only had to take 6 plays on that drive. At this point in the second quarter, Commanders, they're down 14-3. They go down the field in 10 plays. They kick a 46-yard field goal from Zane Gonzalez. Again, that drive only taking 4 minutes. Then the Commanders would finally get their touchdown after they stopped the Eagles and forced from the punt with Terry McLaurin's 36-yard, reception from Jaden Daniels. They went for 2 on this, and they failed. It brought the game back close, 12-14. The Eagles would next get a touchdown of their own with a tush push from Jalen Hurts. That was one of his 3 touchdowns he had on the day, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. Then A.J. Brown would get the touchdown next after the Eagles forced another turnover from the Commanders, and it would be a 4-yard pass from Jalen Hurts. That drive took 7 plays, and it boosted the Eagles' lead a little bit more, up to 27-12. Then Zane Gonzalez, rounding out the first half, would kick a 42-yard field goal to bring the score to 27-15 at halftime. To start the third quarter, the Eagles would have a nice drive of 4 plays and 58 yards. That only took 1 minute and 49 seconds with a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown for 10 yards. Well, technically it was 9 yards, but it looked like it was a good 10 yards. Philadelphia is up 34-15. Then the Washington Commanders would finally get something going as Jaden Daniels would have a 10-yard rushing touchdown and a completed pass to Olamide Zaccheaus. I hope I said that right for the 2-point conversion. That drive was 70 yards, 8 plays. Then, in the fourth quarter, it was all Eagles, my friends. The Commanders thought they were bringing it close with that 23-34 end to the third quarter, but let me tell you, the Philadelphia Eagles had something else coming. Jalen Hurts would have another tush-push touchdown to go up 41-23. But then, after the Commanders would turn the ball over yet again, Saquon Barkley would get another 4-yard rushing touchdown, and Will Shipley would also get a 2-yard rushing touchdown to end out this game. The Commanders ended up falling to the Philadelphia Eagles 23-55. The Eagles scoring 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and this game was just utterly insane. The Eagles did not have more than one passing touchdown, but instead they set an NFL record, or at least they tied it, with 7 rushing touchdowns on the day. Jalen Hurts went 20 for 28, 246 yards, and a touchdown through the air. Was only sacked twice. Saquon Barkley, 15 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns. His longest was his first play from scrimmage, 60 yards. Will Shipley also got 4 carries and 77 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Hurts, 10 carries, 16 yards, averaged 1.6 yards per carry, and had 3 touchdowns. If that's just all tush pushes, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't really know. But on the receiving side of things for Philadelphia, who led the room was A.J. Brown, who would have thought, 6 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. His longest reception was 31 yards. Down the sideline, great game here for the Philadelphia Eagles. Fumble-wise, we had 3 recovered fumbles from the Eagles. Kenneth Gainwell recovered a fumble, Zach Bond recovered a fumble, and Reed Blankenship all recovered fumbles. And yet again, you saw in this game that the Eagles forced another fumble on special teams. That is something we're going to have to look at when we go to look at the Super Bowl matchup coming up. Philadelphia, for their defense, Zach Bond, 12 total tackles, 8 solo tackles, 1 TFL. But Oren Burks, 9 tackles, 5 solo tackles, 1 sack, and a TFL as well. My MVP for this Eagles defense today is Cooper DeJean, 6 tackles, 4 solo tackles. He was playing pretty good out there in coverage, and who shares it with him today is also Nolan Smith Jr. with 4 total tackles, 2 solo tackles, and a sack. You know, this Eagles defense really got after the Commanders today, and that's why I'm going to go over to the Commanders side of things. They only put up 23 points compared to the Eagles' 55, but Jaden Daniels, 29 of 48, 255 yards, a touchdown, and he threw an interception. He was sacked 3 times. On the rushing side of things, Jaden Daniels also led the room with 6 carries, 48 yards, and a touchdown. Really, when you're the Commanders, you really need to get the run game going, kind of like the Eagles did. And then later on, you can focus on the pass. Like we saw last week with the Eagles, they couldn't really pass the ball that much. This game, it didn't matter. Jalen Hurts, I mean, he was lighting it up out there. Same with A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devontae Smith, as well as Kenneth Gainwell even. But this Eagles offense had no problem passing on this Commanders defense, even though they were a pretty decent defense throughout the year. I do want to say Tress Way, also the punter, had a completion for 23 yards that went to none other than K-State alumni himself, Ben Sinnott. He was drafted this year in the 2nd round for the Commanders. This was only his 5th reception of the entire year. I feel like I needed to give my boy a shout out. Go Cats. Anyways, continue on the rushing side of the ball for the Commanders. Brian Robinson Jr., 11 carries, 36 yards. You really need to get the run game going. I mean, the Commanders didn't even have 100 yards rushing compared to the Philadelphia Eagles had 229. 229 rushing yards is crazy. The Commanders barely even put up over 350 yards on offense, while the Eagles had well up front of, if not close to, 500 yards of total offense, which is just utterly crazy. Washington's receiving core, Zach Ertz led the room with 11 catches, 104 yards. That was pretty cool. Terry McLaurin, 3 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown himself. And Dyami Brown, 3 catches, 42 yards. Washington. The big problem in this game was their fumbles. Austin Eckler had 1 fumble. Jeremy Nichols also had a fumble, and that was on special teams. And Dyami Brown also fumbled the ball on the sideline. And that was when the game was really close. In about the 2nd quarter, the Commanders were driving, and Dyami Brown caught a pass, went to go make a couple moves, and then fumbled the ball. And that's when things started to go the Eagles' direction firmly, in a firm case in this scenario. On defense, Jeremy Chinn, 9 tackles. The only person that really got a sack in this game was Dorrance Armstrong and Frankie Luvu, which, by the way, I have to say this. Frankie, how in the world do you jump offside 3 times? I mean, that's another crazy thing in this game that I have to talk about, right? Because Frankie Luvu, I mean, he's a good player, you know, number 4 for the Commanders. He's pretty good, right? I mean, he's a young stud. He's a good player. But how do you jump off sides 3 times? I don't know if any of you were actually watching the game, but for those of you that don't know, I'll fill in the context for you. Frankie Louvu jumped off sides 3 times, and then the officials said if he jumped off sides one more time, the ball was so close to the end zone that they would actually award the Philadelphia Eagles a score. I've never heard or seen of that in my life, or in NFL history for that matter. A score being awarded to a team because the other team keeps jumping off sides. Anyways, the ball was literally like 2 inches from the goal line. So, there you have it. My prediction, I was wrong. The Eagles won 55-23 in a pretty decent game. It started out as things ended up going pretty badly. But then, on the one prediction I did have right this week, the Kansas City Chiefs knock off the Buffalo Bills 32-29 to advance to New Orleans to hopefully get a three-peat. But let's first break off of this game, break it down. Excuse me, not break off. I don't know what I'm saying. Let's break down this game first and see what went right for the Kansas City Chiefs. Things started out pretty good as the Bills went 3 and out to start the game. There should have been 2 interceptions on this one drive. Brian Cook had a chance to pick off 2 balls on this first drive for the Bills. But anyways, let's go look at the Chiefs' first drive. They had a 9-play drive that went 90 yards for 5 minutes and ended in a Kareem Hunt rushing touchdown for 12 yards, and they ran this play a lot in this game. I'll get to that here in a little bit. The Bills then went and drove 10 plays for 35 yards and got a field goal of their own. The Chiefs then on their next drive would fumble, which would result in 6 points for the Bills. They're again taking a lead 10-7. Then on the very next drive for the Chiefs, they would take it 11 plays for 70 yards in just 6 minutes to regain the lead off of an Xavier Worthy touchdown. He got the ball in the flat and extended for the goal line there for the Chiefs. And then on the Bills, on their next drive, they'd go 3 plays for 0 yards. And Chiefs at this point still lead the game 14-10. But then on the very next drive, the Chiefs would regain an 11-point lead with a 6-play drive that only lasted 34 yards. But Patrick Mahomes would take the exact same play from earlier and scramble into the end zone for a 1-yard touchdown. There was a penalty on the play, but it was an unnecessary roughness penalty because Travis Kelce got all up in that defensive tackle's face. Or actually, it was technically Damar Hamlin's face because Mahomes ran that guy over. But then on the very next drive, the Bills would get things rolling again with a 7-play drive that resulted in a Mac Hollins touchdown for 34 yards. And like I said during the game, this guy, whoever wears number 13, is always going to be a monster against Kansas City Chiefs. Big game, whoever it is, Gabe Davis, Mac Hollins, doesn't matter. Whoever's wearing 13 is going to have a great game. Trent McDuffie did get called for pass interference on this play, but I completely disagree with that. I don't think it was pass interference. There's been plays like that all season that weren't called. But ultimately, it didn't really matter that much. To end the half, the Chiefs would just simply take a knee, sealing their 21-16 halftime lead. Then to start the second quarter, the Chiefs would get the ball, but after 8 plays, they would result in a punt, which also resulted in a Buffalo touchdown. They take the ball 80 yards down the field for a 12-play drive that resulted in a very nice touchdown to James Cook, where he reached out for that goal line. And let me tell you, that was a very, very good play. However, they went for 2. Josh Allen was sacked on the attempt, therefore making it a 22-21 Buffalo lead. Then on the next drive, the Chiefs would punt the ball after -5 yards, and the Bills would get the ball back, looking to somewhat put an end to things. This would, during this drive, end the third quarter, and to start the fourth quarter, they had a 4th and 1. They converted there, but later on in the drive, they had another 4th and 1, where they went for a nice little tush-push, trying to copy the Eagles, and it got stuffed. A lot of people had a lot of controversy about this call, saying that he should have been over the line to gain, but based off of where Josh Allen had the ball positioned on his body, there was no way, especially seeing that Chris Jones was blocking the view of the officials, There was no way that call was going to get overturned because on the field, they shorted the ball short. They spotted the ball short anyways. Anyways, past that, the Chiefs on their next drive would lead a 5-play drive with 59 yards in just 2 minutes and 41 seconds. And they would also get the 2-point conversion. By the way, that touchdown was Patrick Mahomes for a 10-yard rush. And this play is what I was talking about from earlier. They ran a lot of read option in this game, and it was very beneficial for the Chiefs. I feel like they took several plays out of the Baltimore Ravens playbook in those read option scenarios, because you can look at this play and the Kareem Hunt touchdown. If he would have handed it off to Kareem Hunt again, he almost had the exact same touchdown he would have had earlier. He just liked the matchup that he had, so he took it and ran with it. You can go back and look at this. It's literally the exact same play, drew up the exact same way. It's just Mahomes pulled it instead of give it to Kareem Hunt. After this, there was an official TV timeout, whatever, who cares. Then, on the very next drive, Buffalo would go 70 yards in just 3 minutes and 59 seconds, almost 4 minutes, and Josh Allen would throw in the back of the end zone on 4th and goal to a wide-open Curtis Samuel. I think it was broken coverage, but Tyler Bass would make the extra point, making it a 29-29 game. It was all tied up, and in just 8 plays, 51 yards, and in 2 minutes, the Chiefs drove down the field, unable to get anything going. Mahomes had 2 incompletions in a row after being sacked for 7 yards on 1st and goal. They had to ultimately settle for a field goal. Harrison Butker nailed it, and giving the Chiefs the 32-29 lead, which would ultimately end up for the Chiefs win because the Buffalo Bills would turn over on downs after on 4th and 5, coming out of a 2-minute warning. Spags sent pressure. Everybody was all over that guy, Josh Allen, and George Karlaftis almost got a huge sack there on 4th and 5. Instead, Josh Allen heaved up a prayer to none other than tight end Dalton Kincaid. And then the Chiefs, by the way, Dalton Kincaid did not catch that ball. It was a good ball by Josh Allen. Then the Chiefs would go 7 plays, convert 2 first downs, and Samaje Perine would help get the Chiefs to kneel down and advance to the Super Bowl. Let's look at some of the stats of this game. Josh Allen went 22 of 34, 273 yards, or 237 yards, in the air, for 2 touchdowns. He was only sacked twice in this game, which is very impressive that we sacked him more than any other team in the playoffs did, I believe. That is correct. James Cook, 13 carries, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Josh Allen, 11 carries, 39 yards, but 0 rushing touchdowns on the ground for Josh Allen today. That was something that was very uncharacteristic for the Bills. They did not run Josh Allen as much, even though I say he ran for 11 carries, but he didn't really go for very much at a time. His longest rush was only 13 yards, and most of these carries came on tush pushes. On the receiving side of the ball for the Bills, Mac Hollins led the room with 3 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, his longest being that 34-yard touchdown pass or reception in the end zone. He was only targeted 4 times. James Cook then came in next, 3 receptions, 49 yards of his own. Then, turnover-wise, Josh Allen didn't throw any picks, but he did have a fumble. He actually had 3 fumbles, which was crazy, but he recovered all 3 of them. Surprising enough, the Bills actually fumbled the ball 4 times in this game, but never lost a single fumble as they recovered every single one of them. The only person that actually turned over the ball once in this game was indeed Patrick Mahomes. It was not an interception, but it was a fumble of his own, and Oliver was the one to recover that one. The Buffalo defense, led by Cole Bishop, 10 total tackles, 9 solo tackles. That's very impressive. But Matt Milano, who a lot of people didn't think, or at least I didn't, was going to play in this game, 9 total tackles with 8 solo tackles and 1 sack. This Bills defense was pretty dadgum good in this game. Hats off to the Bills for playing such a great game. But unfortunately, the Chiefs just played better. Patrick Mahomes, 18 completions for 26 incompletions. I guess that's technically wrong because he went 18 for 26, meaning he had, 8 incompletions on the day or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But 245 yards and a touchdown for Patrick Mahomes as well. Also only getting sacked twice. Kareem Hunt, 17 carries, 64 yards, and a touchdown. His longest rush was only 12 yards, and surprising enough, that was his touchdown run. But it did look like Kareem Hunt was kind of eating away at this Bills defense eventually. Then Patrick Mahomes, 11 carries, 43 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That is something Patrick Mahomes has not done in his entire playoff career, and that is actually pretty dadgum impressive. His longest rush came on a 12-yard play, but his second longest rush was that 10-yard touchdown run that was the exact same play that Kareem Hunt got his touchdown run on. Anywho, the Kansas City receiving core, Xavier Worthy, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and 1 touchdown, led the room with 7 targets. Juju Smith-Schuster caught 2 balls for 60 yards. One of his longest catches of the day was 31 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster came up when was needed the most in this game, even though he only had 2 catches. Both of them were for 30-plus yard plays. That's impressive. Or I guess his second one was close to 30 yards, but you know what I mean. 29 yards and 31. He was only targeted 3 times in this game. Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce did not do very much, with Hollywood Brown 3 receptions and 35 yards, and Kelce only catching 2 passes, which snaps Travis Kelce's record of having over 70-plus receiving yards in every playoff game he's ever played in. Or I think it was close to that. He had a streak going, but that was snapped. He only had 19 receiving yards in this one. Samaje Perine, funny enough, I just want to bring this up real quick, only had 1 catch, and that was at the end of the game to seal the game for 17 yards. On the defensive side of the thing for the Kansas City Chiefs, side of the ball for the Kansas City Chiefs, Shamari Connor led the room in tackles with 9. Drew Tranquill also had 9, and Nick Bolton had 6. Justin Reed making a bunch of big hits out there with 5 total tackles, and 4 of them were solo tackles. He also had a TFL. And then we have my personal MVP of this game was split between Mike Danna and Tershawn Wharton, as well as George Karlaftis. Heck, you know what? This is my podcast. I can do what I want. The MVP of this game was the Chiefs' D-line. They got after Josh Allen when it mattered most. They sacked him twice. Mike Danna also getting a sack was Tershawn Wharton. Both of these guys got big when it needed most. George Karlaftis had the most pressures on Josh Allen in the day, almost sacking him 3 times, which was kind of crazy. But when it came down to it, the Chiefs ended up winning this one 32-29 in a very impressive victory for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't care what you say. The Chiefs won this game fair and square. The Bills and a lot of other teams, heck, almost everybody else was complaining about the refs in this game. Like I've said before, if you have to complain about the refs, that just means your team didn't play ball. Really, no bad things about the Bills other than they just couldn't beat us. And that means we were the better team. You know, we were undefeated at home this season, and that streak continued as we move on to New Orleans in the Super Bowl. So, next, I will touch a little bit on the Super Bowl. It will be between the Eagles and the Chiefs. I'm going to say that for next week's episode. So, if you want to tune in to next week's episode, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, give me a rating if you're listening on Spotify, because I will be predicting that Super Bowl next week. But to listen on in this week, we got a little bit of coach carousel going on in the off season here. A lot of coaching move-arounds and surprises and people not coming back to their original program and just not answering the phone, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Anyways, as of recent hirings, the Miami Dolphins got their special teams coordinator in Craig Ackerman. I'm not going to say all these names correctly, so I'm sorry in advance. They also got receivers coach Robert Prince. The Detroit Lions had to hire a new offense and defensive coordinator, seeing that both of theirs got snatched. Their new offensive coordinator is John Morton, and their new defensive coordinator is Kelvin Shepard. Then we move on to the Dallas Cowboys, Cowboys, I'd feel sorry for you, but my team's in a Super Bowl. So, anyways, Dallas Cowboys, they hired within for their head coach. They hired from within the organization for their head coach, with Brian Schottenheimer. I hope I said that right. And their defensive coordinator is now Matt Eberflus. I so hope he doesn't think he needs to use timeouts on defense, or at least I think that's the idea here, putting him at the defensive coordinator, saying that he is, all jokes aside, a good defensive head coach. Probably why he didn't call any timeouts for the Bears. Jokes aside, the Dallas Cowboys also got their new special teams offensive coordinator. No, just special teams coordinator, Nick Sorensen. The 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, hired their defensive coordinator, who was previously fired from the head coaching job of the New York Jets, Robert Saleh, this week. They also got a new special teams coordinator, Brian Boyer. Oh boy, this is also fantastic. The Chicago Bears got their new head coach, who they snatched up from the Detroit Lions, their old offensive coordinator, and the Bears' new head coach, Ben Johnson. I hope that they can make something work out with this new offense, especially around Caleb Williams, and we'll see what the Bears' offense looks like next year, especially because their new offensive coordinator is Declan Doyle. You know, honestly, it doesn't really matter who your offensive coordinator is. You got Ben Johnson, a head coach. He's practically going to be doing the play calling, or at least I hope that's the idea behind this hiring. Defensive coordinator is Dennis Allen for the Chicago Bears, a well-known name. The Seattle Seahawks, they had a former coach get hired this week, but they got a new offensive coordinator, and Clint Kubiak, a well-known hired from the Saints offensive coordinator, who was just fired not that long ago. On Jacksonville, they got a offensive coordinator to be hired as head coach who stood up the Bills and straight up refused to answer any phone calls. And yes, I am talking about Liam Cohen. He was very good for the Buccaneers, and I think he will be able to turn around this offense and, frankly, this entire team for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Atlanta Falcons also got their new defensive coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich. I'm sure he'll be a lot better than whoever in the world they had in there. They also got a new defensive passing game coordinator and a defensive line coach. But moving on, the Las Vegas Raiders, man, Joe Brady, why am I saying Joe Brady? Tom Brady was really pulling some strings behind the scenes because they got their new head coach in Seattle Seahawks legend, Pete Carroll, came out of retirement, making him officially the oldest NFL coach in NFL history. They also got a new general manager in John Spytek. I hope I got that right. But the Cincinnati Bengals also got their new defensive coordinator in Al Golden. I'm sure he will be a lot better than Lou Anarumo. However, the New York Jets also got their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, and new general manager, Darren Bauge. I hope I said that right. I don't think I did. Not even close. I completely butchered that. But the New England Patriots, as we all know already, got Mike Vrabel as their head coach. Offensive coordinator, I don't understand this other than the fact that maybe Mike Vrabel is turning into an offensive-minded head coach, but he played linebacker and he's a defensive head coach. So this offensive coordinator, I mean, it's Josh McDaniels, okay? It's Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels, I thought he fell off the face of the earth, but he's back. He's back at the Patriots, so there you go. Defensive coordinator is Terrell Williams now for the New England Patriots. I'm sure that's a fine, great hire. The Tennessee Titans got Chiefs' old, I guess you could say backup or reserve or second in command general manager, Mike Borgonzi. He was very, very good in this, coordinator or manager, general manager room for the Chiefs. I said coordinator because I was looking at the Tennessee Titans special teams coordinator, who they just hired as John Fassel. Very good special teams coordinator. And the Indianapolis Colts, I think the Indianapolis Colts need to clean house, me personally, but they hired Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator. Did they not just see what happened to the Bengals, why they didn't make the playoffs? I mean, the Bengals didn't not make the playoffs because of their defense. Really, I mean, that offense was nuclear. You had Joe Burrow throwing for over 5,000 yards, I think, and leading the league in passing yards. And then you had Jamar Chase going nuts, but that defense was pitiful. And then the Colts see that and go, Oh, who is your coordinator? Lou Anarumo? Oh, that's the guy we want right there. Anyways, the Cleveland Browns is the last one on my list. They got last one on my list, not wrist. I am so sorry, guys. I'm a bit jumbled today, but they got a new offensive coordinator in Tommy Reeves and a new offensive line coach in Mike Blumengren. That wraps it up for this episode of the Tackle Talk Network. I am so glad that you guys took your time out of your day to listen to my podcast. I thank you for everything. Don't forget to like and subscribe on my YouTube. And go ahead and give me a like and a follow on Spotify. It really helps out the algorithm. I will say I had a lot more views last week and in this month than I've ever had on my channel. And I thank you for that when it comes to videos. And that's it for me. And whether you're listening outside while you work or at home, listen to my podcast. I thank you for tuning in to the Tackle Talk Network. I'll see you next week.